we had that. Civil society, the media to ensure credibility. Strong measures such as transparent vote counting must be put in place. Reform should also address the financing of political campaigns, ensuring that money does not overshadow the voice of the people. But there is something I would like to add, Mr. Speaker. You can't play with the mind of people, because even if I, as a politician, maybe, as I say, I can pay someone's ticket, I can maybe pay someone to vote for me. But at the end of the day, when the person goes to vote, you don't know who they vote for. And I am speaking, and sometimes, as I say, every time I come to Parliament, that when we sit on this side of the house, that people expect to oppose. But at the end of the day, we are here in Dominica, and it's our country. And even if, as I said a while ago, that I am paid because persons feel like some persons are being paid to come to vote, at the end of the day, you don't know who I vote for. They are two-faced people. So we have to let this move on. Furthermore, an independent electoral commission is essential for the credibility of elections. Electoral management bodies must be free from political influence and empowered to enforce election laws impartially. If the electoral commissions lack the capacity to self-govern, then the entire democratic process would be at risk. We must also recognize the electoral reform is not a one-time event, but it should be an ongoing process, as my colleague said earlier. As societies evolve, so too must our electoral systems. Continuous reviews, recommendations, feedbacks, and adaptation are necessary to address emerging challenges and uphold democratic principles. Mr. Speaker, let us also remember that democracy is not merely about holding an election. It is about ensuring that those elections are free, fair, and reflective of the people's will. The fight for electoral integrity is shared responsibility, requiring commitment from government, political parties, civil societies, and most importantly, the people. Without the people, we are not here. If I was voted, Mr. Speaker, I would not be here representing the people of Salisbury constituency. When our elections are conducted with fairness and transparency, democracy thrives, governance improves, and citizens can truly have faith in the leaders they choose. Thank you so very much, Mr. Speaker.
You can start. Yes, hold, just press and... Okay, stop. I was interacting with the honorable members because a glass got broken there and water is affecting the system. So I was going to suspend for 2 minutes, but proceed and we'll just get someone to deal with it as you are speaking on your feet.
Okay.
Yes.
Oh, yeah, it works.
Yeah, you can,
yeah.
No, don't touch it, touch it again. Okay, stop. No.
Oh, there you go. Thank you. Mr. Speaker, I seek your permission to refer to my notes.
Permission granted.
I wish to give some contribution to the bill for an act to make provision for
elections of members to the House of Assembly, placed before this Honorable House this afternoon. Mr. Speaker, I have reviewed the bill which intends to reform Dominica's electoral process. Though some improvements in the electoral process is considered here, there are inadequacies in the bill. There is some pertinent information which needs to be included in this reform to ensure that the election process is free and that it is fair. Election offenses. Continue? Yes. Mr. Speaker, Part 6 of the bill pays attention to offenses that may affect the election process. However, Mr. Speaker, obvious and pertinent acts that can affect the electoral process was not provided for in this bill, Section 61A and B, specifically speaks to entertainment. Mr. Speaker, we read the bill, so I don't need to say what A and B are. Mr. Speaker, in this section, specific attention is paid to entertainment. Entertainment refers to activities, performances, or forms of media designed to amuse, entertain, or engage an audience, encompassing a wide range of experience like movies, music, sports, and games. This specific detail speaks clearly without a doubt against large concerts and fests with international artists that we have witnessed over the years. And when this bill turns into law, all parties should be held accountable, Mr. Speaker, and charged for committing the offense of treating under this act. I read it, that is the section. I'm speaking specifically to entertainment, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, another bugging issue for the majority was omitted and should have been legislated against. Mr. Speaker, it is truly a serious and vexing issue. We've heard at the consultations, we continue to hear the people speaking about this section. Mr. Speaker, Section 61, it has A and Section B. I think we're missing a C in this area. I'm no lawyer, but I think we're missing something that can speak specifically, to the treating, including the transportation of voters and entertainment of those voters coming in to vote. Mr. Speaker, the sole purpose of coming into the country, if your sole purpose of coming into the country is to cast a vote, Mr. Speaker, and your ticket is gifted to you and so on, this is a glaring and obvious act of treating which should not be overlooked or omitted. So I'm saying, if your sole purpose is coming into the country just to vote, and you're gifted a ticket and spending money for that purpose, it should be considered as treating. I did not say that you cannot come into the country. If you're coming for this specific reason, it is treating. Mr. Speaker, we look further at the topic of election campaign financing, as the Honourable Member from Salisbury was speaking on earlier on. It continues to be a hot topic, Mr. Speaker. It seems to be a concern for many citizens, those in and out of this House, and those who continue to speak about it. It was a recommendation found in the Electoral Reform Consultant document done by Mr. Sir Dennis Byron, and somehow it was completely omitted from the bill. Mr. Speaker, at this critical time in politics where money is an issue and spending lavishly is an issue, Mr. Speaker, I think that election campaign financing regulation should be a critical part of the legislature. Mr. Speaker, I took some time to review different election campaign finances because we don't have that here. So I took a look at Jamaica, and they did an election campaign financing act in 2016. So for me to better understand what that meant, I went through the document and the presentations to understand what it provides for. Because of course, I'm not a lawyer, so I don't know these things. You have to read to understand. Mr. Speaker, This provides for a regulatory framework for effectively monitoring and assessing political party funding and election campaign financing in the country. So, Mr. Speaker, it speaks of issues surrounding regulations and issues surrounding funds being available for financing being available for spending during election time, how lavish it's done, and to put some kind of control on how politicians in power, out of power, aspiring to be, can spend and inquire and request cash. Mr. Speaker, there are obvious issues surrounding need for regulation at this time. The regulations are all for everybody related in politics, no matter where you stand. In government, out of government, on the side, it is very important that every individual is assessed in this part of the electoral process. Mr. Speaker, there needs to be something in law which regulates election campaign financing and monitors streams of income, supporting the campaigns of political parties and candidates. Mr. Speaker, I'm all against you have your community groups putting funds into what you're doing. There needs to be some sort of same as you have these NGOs, there's regulatory bodies governing how their funds are being spent and how they receive funds, Mr. Speaker. There needs to be control over the spending of everyone, in power, out of power. And the access to funding needs to be equal and untainted. Mr. Speaker, we can put this into legislation. We can put this into we still have time, Mr. Speaker. We can set a standard by which funds should be acquired. We can put in place guidelines within which contributions can be made. We can put on paper the requirements of declaration and disclosure by contributors. Mr. Speaker, we can ensure that it is a responsibility of all the political parties, candidates, to declare their campaign finances, to make available to the public how their funds are received and how it is spent. Thank you.
Yes, Honorable Pinard, you may proceed.
Good day, Mr. Speaker. Thank you. Mr. Speaker, I just needed to stand up and ensure that I verbally express my support for the bills being debated in the Honorable House today. Mr. Speaker, electoral reform is an issue that has been hanging over the people of Dominica's head for a very long time. And so today is a very historic day when we can hopefully put this matter to rest. I mean, we agree that we will, it's a continuous process. I do not think we'll go another 40 plus years before we further update electoral laws, but this is the first time we have some serious update to the law since independence. And so today is indeed a historical day. Mr. Speaker, with respect to the bill we're now looking at, the House of Assembly Act, as the AG just said, campaign financing, well, campaign finance is not part of it. The AG just said access to the media is what was included and differs from the previous legislation, the outgoing legislation. Access to the media is very progressive. It's a very progressive path addition because only 2 other countries in the region have these included in the election laws. So essentially, we're moving ahead of the majority of our OECS comrades in that regard. So we can see that this bill, as the 2 others are, is a progressive bill. The Honorable Senator spoke about treating. The treating laws we have in our existing books, they are identical to that of all the other OECS and CARICOM countries. If we're looking at the United States of America, Mr. Speaker, in any one of their political rallies, you see all these mega stars, and so America is generally regarded as the bastion of democracy and whatever the case is. So, well, it historically has been the gold standard that the rest of the world aspires to. So I do not think that us bringing Movado down to play some tunes can rise to the level of treating. And I also think that we have to give Dominicans some respect and recognize that if you're not supporting a political party and you did not have intention of voting for them for whatever reasons you consider justifiable, you can go enjoy a Movado show and still at the end of the day go and vote for who you want. So I do not think that that rises to the level of treating. Nonetheless, the campaign financing aspect of it, I think the Prime Minister is on record multiple times of saying that in principle, the government is not opposed to campaign financing laws being enacted. It's just that we do not think that we are at the stage where we are ready to put this in because of the complications that will arise from it. And we are looking at this more in line of a homogeneous legislation to incorporate the entire OECS region. But principally, we are not against campaign financing legislation, and it is something for down the road. We have to understand that we need to move this matter forward. We cannot continue to stall the progress of putting election reform to the parliament and making it into law because we do not get every little thing or every little idea that comes into our head has to be included in there, because if we have to continue doing that, the process will never come to a completion. As we have seen over the years, Mr. Speaker, whenever we have acceded and accepted one of the conditions that the opposition has put through, then they come up with something different. So I can bet you if we had to agree to that, and if we had to agree to every other thing that they came up with, they would still not want electoral reform to pass because there will be new things added on as we go along. Because the whole point of it is not really to pass electoral reform laws, but it is really to say they want to pass electoral reform laws, but keep the excuse that they can give their supporters as to why it is that they are not winning elections, why is it that they're getting beaten so badly. But that is not for our current opposition members. As we just saw, Mr. Speaker, every single member of this House supported the previous bill. So what we're referring to is just, as the Prime Minister would describe them, a fringe remnant of a past opposition that is against the passage of electoral reform. But the people's business has to continue, and there's always this talk you hear in the media about the people. Actually, this morning when I was getting ready to come down here, I heard this reading out from one of the leaders of the Freedom Party speaking about the will of the people. Mr. Speaker, in this House we have 21 elected members of Parliament, each one representing people. When this House sits and this House make a decision, that is where the people will is known. The Bar Association, the Business Forum, religious groups, nobody else can say they're representing the people like the Reps sitting here. And the people unanimously votes and unanimously supports the electoral reform bills passing in this House today. Mr. Speaker, I really wanted to speak on other issues like the voter ID cards, residency, the confirmation process, and so on. But I see that these are in the bills that we have already debated, and so we do not need to rehash that. We already passed that unanimously. But I just really want to, first of all, give credit to the Honorable Prime Minister for persisting with this. That process actually really started since 2011, so it's been 14 years since the cabinet first advised the president and then the Electoral Commission that it wanted to pass national ID cards. The journey has been long, the journey has been tumultuous, there have been gunshots, there have been, back and forths going on, but the government, the Prime Minister, the government, the cabinet has stuck to their guns, and we have arrived here today. And so this is very commendable, and I want to give them full credit for that. I want to give every member in this House full credit for supporting these progressive bills, and I want to just say that I support the bill. Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker.
Yes, Senator, you may proceed.
Mr. Speaker, other parliamentary colleagues, Mr. Speaker, I want to also seek your permission again to refer to my notes from time to time.
Permission granted.
Mr. Speaker, former Canadian Prime Minister Jacques, and forgive me if I pronounce this wrong, Jacques Chrétien, when introducing campaign finance reforms, said, money must not be allowed to replace the ideas as the currency of a political system. Democracy is diminished if only those with money can fully participate. Former UK Prime Minister Gordon Brown said, the health of our democracy depends on maintaining a level playing field in elections, ensuring that the volume of our party's voice does not depend on the depth of our donors' pockets. Former Indian Chief Elections Commissioner, and Mr. Speaker, I will not try to say his name, so I'll just give his initials, SYQ, remarked, unregulated money in politics is a fountainhead of corruption, and no meaningful electoral reform are possible without addressing political funding. Mr. Speaker, we can bring it a little closer home. We can bring it a little closer home. Even our very own Roosevelt Douglas stated that we need robust control over our election spending to ensure that political parties are properly accountable to the people of Dominica, to prevent conflict of interest and the exercise of improper influence. DLP-DFP coalition is committed to cleaning up Dominica's politics and ensuring the way political parties are funded becomes open and transparent. We can bring it closer home. The Right Honourable Patricia Scotland stated, a truly democratic system demands political equality, which unfortunately eludes us. While there are many factors that contribute to the political inequality, such as discrimination and exclusionary politics, none is as notorious as the negative impact of unregulated finance in politics and in governance. It's one of the biggest hindrances to credible, transparent, and inclusive democratic process. Commonwealth member countries are no expression. Mr. Speaker, it is on this backdrop that I believe many electoral systems inside of the Caribbean and outside of the Caribbean have made electoral and campaign finance reforms a key part and a key feature, as alive and continuously updated as it might need to be, made it a key part of their political system. It is also on that backdrop that I believe the Right Honourable Dennis Byron, in his submissions, tabled and proposed in his House of Assembly elections bill to deal with campaign financing, touching on contributions of gifts, of money or gifts of other kind, talking about election expenses and limits on campaign expenditure, talking about other financial provisions from political parties, keeping the records, and also being transparent about the monies they have received. And the Commission's duty also to maintain records and reports. Lots to say about this, Mr. Speaker, and we can go on and on quoting people and some of the leaders around the world that we revere and we sometimes use, and how we sometimes try to compare our political system to theirs when it is convenient for us. But what I fear, Mr. Speaker, and what I think is a vexing issue, is the fact that we hear, even in some of the responses during the committee stage, we agree on that. You know, our special committee meetings. That stipulating or making any kind of advancement towards electoral campaign finance reforms is too big for us. That is the sentiment that I'm getting. And so we will leave it, and we won't do anything about it yet. And yes, we will say that we agreed, and we agree that it is important, but we want to do it harmoniously. We want to do it. But while we're waiting on that to happen, there still exists the vulnerabilities in our electoral system, where big money, dirty money, outside money can how?
No, he didn't specify to anything, so he can proceed. He just said dirty money in campaign.
How?
He can proceed. He can
I can
proceed.
proceed,
He
Mr.
didn't
Speaker?
specify to any political organization.
Where big money, dirty money can affect our political and our electoral system. Where big money, outside money, dirty money can affect our electoral system. And I think it should be responsible of us. Because, Mr. Speaker, we pretend as though it can only happen on one side. Dirty money can affect the other side too. The shoes doesn't always fit on one foot, you know, Mr. Speaker. And the tables, something about tables, they have a way of turning. And responsible governance and ethical governance practices says we need to put the safeguards in place to ensure that we are protecting our political system and our electoral system against things that across the globe responsible governments are saying, even though we don't get it right the first time, even though all of the safeguards aren't in place, but we're making steps in the direction to make sure that money doesn't drown the voice and reduce the authenticity of democracy. Again, Mr. Speaker, that is why we made recommendations in our special committee regarding the amendments to this current bill for finance reform, for electoral finance reform. Stating that campaign expenditure includes all costs incurred by a candidate or political party or individual or entity on their behalf for electoral purposes. Ensuring that we find ways to put limits in, recommendations, ensuring that our society is not expending monies that we shouldn't have to, simply to attract a vote. Because that, Mr. Speaker, without regulation, according to all of the world leaders that you've heard before, including Kofi Annan, former Secretary General of the United Nations, ensuring if we don't put in those safeguards, we are leaving our electoral system too vulnerable. And I don't think it is without and outside of our capacity to start putting some of these regulations in place. I don't think we should wait on all our neighbors, because all our neighbors are not waiting on us. It's a good idea. But how long is it going to take? And how long are we going to leave off our electoral process vulnerable? Because, Mr. Speaker, it leads to other things. I mean, we're talking about these bills in three separate parts, but it's all one thing. All in an effort to ensure that we're protecting our system, protecting our electoral system. It's pretty serious. And yeah, we don't want the whole bill thrown out. That would be irresponsible. But also ethically, as members on both sides have tabled, this should be something that is alive and continuously evolving. Mr. Speaker, on the issue of the abuse of incumbency, abuse of incumbency relates, particularly in a parliamentary system, to the improper use of official powers, resources, or position by current office holders to gain unfair advantage in elections. This occurs when those currently in power exploit their position to tilt the electoral playing field in their favor. How? By the misuse of state resources, using government vehicles, buildings, equipment for campaign purposes. And I'm sure everybody would agree that that's improper. Deploying civil servants or public employees to support campaign activities. We had that discussion before, where we're saying we should not necessarily attempt to double legislate, because in our public service regulations, there are already regulations that deal with that. But it's important to note, because while we know one thing, human nature does not always allow us to make the best decisions. That's why we have safeguards in place. We can talk about the media advantage and the policy timing and the security apparatus influence. You see, because, Mr. Speaker, the phenomenon is particularly concerning because the executive, as we see here in our chamber, often emerges from and maintains close ties with the legislature or with the legislative majority. One more read through or browse through one of the most recent audit reports would give us an idea of where these breaches can happen, where we have continued unanswered questions that raise concerns about how we potentially can be abusing our incumbency. And Mr. Speaker, again, we've made recommendations, not to kick out the whole thing, but to say, we're not looking at this area here, and that is a peculiar vulnerability that we have, and it should be addressed to prevent the abuse of incumbency and establish penalties for the violations. Prohibition of the use of state resources. I remember in our special committee, that's something that we unanimously agreed to. That obviously nobody wants to be using state buildings and state resources for campaigns. But it's one thing to say it and agree to it. It's another thing to ensure that we legislate it. Mr. Speaker, finally, on the issue of money, and I know we have extensive sections that deal with the issue of bribery, but one thing would allay some doubt, bring some clarity, and ensure that we're all operating on the level playing field that we would like to operate on. and that is the inclusion of for the avoidance of doubt clause. And I will read, Mr. Speaker, that there is extensive consideration on the issue of bribery and cheating. And I'm sure that we can all assume, or I'm sure that we can all agree, that it needs to be clear that the payment or promise of payment for transportation, for expenses, for pocket money and pocket change, for voters, particularly those overseas, to vote in elections in Dominica, under condition, whether expressed or implied, that you should vote for a particular party. On the expression that you're doing that in a way that will cause that same person that might be in receipt of those things to agree to vote for you. Some people like to liken that to giving a voter a ride from one area to another. Again, conflation of issues. And try to equate it to bringing somebody from an overseas territory to yours. It's not the same. Because there's a different value. And there's a different implication. And for the avoidance of doubt, Mr. Speaker, this is one of the things that we should put in. Just one clause, Mr. Speaker. Not much. Because, Mr. Speaker, as I mentioned earlier on, this, and many people have mentioned it, this is not about putting one party at a disadvantage of the other. It is about ensuring that we all operate from a level playing field. Because as I mentioned earlier, sometimes the shoe might end up on the other foot. Thank you.
Mr. Speaker, I will be short in closing the debate, but I think it might be helpful for me to just continue from pretty much where Senator Paris ended up. He was making a suggestion of a proviso that could be inserted, he says, to address the concern that he and others, he says, has in relation to bribery. So, Mr. Speaker, he spoke of an avoidance of doubt clause. So I'm going to put before the House an alternative avoidance of doubt clause, Mr. Speaker. And it reads as follows. For the avoidance of doubt, the transportation of electors or the facilitation of transportation of electors to or within Dominica for the purposes of an election does not constitute an offense unless the transportation is provided or facilitated with the intention to corruptly induce an elector to vote for a particular candidate for whom or party for which the elector would not otherwise vote. It may be, Mr. Speaker, that Senator Paris would prefer the version that I just gave, rather than one that he gave. Okay, all right, okay. Mr. Speaker, the interesting thing is that what I just read came from the 2017 bill that was before the House. What I just read is one of the provisions that was sought to be inserted into that to clarify what bribery is in terms of a definition, a simple definition, based on the law as it stands, in Paulsbury's laws of England and all the case law. And this is one of the two provisions that opposition forces at the time vigorously opposed. And they're now swinging back and coming with one of their own, suggesting that that should be adopted as an avoidance of doubt clause, Mr. Speaker. But I don't think that that has any realistic prospect of surviving. The truth of the matter, Mr. Speaker, is that bribery, despite what the opposition continue to insist, is not defined in the way that they say. The definition in Hallsbury's paragraph 770, that's 770 of Hallsbury's Laws of England, the definition is the unconditional payment or promise of payment to a voter of his traveling expenses is not bribery. So it's the definition of what in relation to transportation is not bribery. So Senator Henderson, like Senator Paris, both expounded on what they think or they say should be the law. Well, it doesn't work that way. It is not what we think should be the law. Neither of them have pointed to what the law is and said, this is what the law is. They're simply saying, for example, in his case, there's a difference, he says, a value difference between paying or facilitating somebody to come from abroad and facilitating somebody to come from Marigot to Roseau. Well, there may be a value difference, but where is the law that says that that value difference makes it an offense? It may be what you'd like to be the case, but that's not the same thing as saying that that is the principle is, and it is set out in Hallsbury's, very clearly, you can read it, that what makes a transaction between an individual or between a party or between parties in relation to transportation, what takes it over the threshold to make it become, potentially at least, bribery is a couple of things. And one of them, and the main one, is the intent, the corrupt intent. Are you intending to corruptly to influence that person? As opposed to, are you simply facilitating the person? And there may be issues around the expenses, what are expenses, what are not expenses. But they're not things that you can just decree or I can decree. So, you know, the same applies to what Senator Henderson was saying about treating. She basically repeated what is the talking points from those who are opposed to the legislation and who have been agitating for this. But treating, again, is very clearly set out as what it is, and simply having entertainment, public entertainment, in and of itself, is not treating, is not a criminal offense. The other thing that I think I just say to wrap up on that point is this, that, again, I've heard it on the radio stations, and I think I heard perhaps Senator Paris, but if not him, Senator Henderson, inferring that other jurisdictions have some better, different provision. The document I have in my hand, the document which reflects research that I have done. So your research, if you've done it, may be different. But my research, it tells me that every jurisdiction in CARICOM, well, let me say the 15 that I have here, have, I don't have Haiti, and I think it is, so but the 15 that I have, every one of them, from Anguilla, through Antigua, through Belize, Guyana, Jamaica, and Trinidad, every one of them has provisions for bribery and treating. And my note is that both the bribery and treating provisions of all OECS and CARICOM jurisdictions are virtually identical to the corresponding provisions in clause 60 and 61 of Dominica's House of Assembly Bill 2024, or sections 55 and 56 of the existing House of Assembly Act. They are the same. They have a whole series of subparagraphs going down A through to, I think it's something like H. Exactly the same, exactly the same. So this attempt to muddy the waters and create a problem that doesn't exist, I think the good thing is that we are making headway, and I hope we can move, maybe slowly, but move to real substantive issues that will be useful to improving the lives of the people of Dominica. As regards the issue of campaign finance, Mr. Speaker, again, Senator Paris, I think, indicated that Sir Dennis had made certain observations in that regard. Speaking for myself, having read the provisions that Sir Dennis put forward in relation to campaign finance, and I should say I've also read the Jamaican provisions. Sir Dennis's provisions reflect almost exactly a fairly significant proportion of the 2016 amendment, Jamaican amendment to its legislation, which introduced that particular level of campaign financing. Section 52A, D, till I think it's A, B, B, Z, or something like that, or ZZ. This is the number of provisions. But one of the things that I think is significantly lacking in respect of the proposal by Sir Dennis is any analysis. We can't simply pick something up, especially something as significant as campaign financing, and simply run with it because it's in a document recommended. What's the Jamaican experience? Is it working? What are the shortfalls? What are the shortcomings? What has been discovered in the Jamaican experience that we in Dominica should be wary of? Nothing. There's none of that. So it's all well and good to put forward a proposal, but I think, and I will say that in Dominica we don't just pick up things and run. Certainly not from the legal side of it. Other jurisdictions sometimes may do that, but we have to analyze it ourselves. We have to understand it. And campaign finance, you will find if you do any research on it, is something that is fraught. There's a lot of academic research on it, and there's lots of different views, but it's not all positive. It can have very deleterious effects on your body politic if you do not get the system right. It's something that has to be studied and understood and adjusted, and it really has to be bespoke to the particular jurisdiction. So the government, and the Prime Minister has said so publicly on a number of occasions, the government is not opposed in principle to campaign financing. But what is required is campaign financing that is going to improve our electoral and political system, not campaign financing that has a danger of perhaps making things worse. So that is a strong point, and I think it might be useful to those who are articulating a great desire for campaign financing. It might be useful for them to spend some time, perhaps in collaboration with the government, perhaps in collaboration with others, to try to come up with positive, sensible, substantive, and workable provisions, rather than simply articulating that we should have campaign financing. I may react like my colleague there, if you will keep doing that. Well, never. So, Mr. Speaker, anyway, the reality, Mr. Speaker, is that we come to the House, and I'm in the House, I'm in the House. If I'm not there, I'm not there. But if I'm there, I'm there. And as far as I'm concerned, Mr. Speaker, there are some things that need to be addressed and responded to, and some can be left. This issue of campaign financing is one of those issues that I think needs to be addressed, because there are serious misgivings, and I have a responsibility, as far as I'm concerned, not to allow members of the public to be misguided and misled into false beliefs and wrong beliefs about things. Another factor, and I'm going to end shortly, that about the Jamaica model. The Jamaica model includes state funding as well as a fund called the National Election Campaign Fund, which is, those funds are funds that can be drawn on by parties or politicians, candidates, separate from the limitations that are put upon them, whether it be for expenses or for contributions. And so I think what is clear is that we need to understand exactly what we want. And I will say this before I say it, that even in our own experience, the United Workers' Party, in the consultations and in discussions that have taken place with the Electoral Reform Commission and others when they have put forward their position and as far as I'm aware, it hasn't changed, is that there should be a limit of $50 per constituent in a constituency for expenditure. That's their campaign finance provision. Now, the village of Collyho, or the constituency of Collyho, I should say, with its large population, times $50, may not even buy you 2 banners. So that shows the absurdity of some of the proposals. The Dominica Business Forum has a proposal of $100. So even within our own discussions, there's a lot of room for us to grow and build. And I just put those figures forward to show that at the moment where we are, we're not yet ready for campaign finance. We need to do more work. And when I addressed the House earlier, I said that electoral reform is not a one-time exercise. That's part of what I meant. What I mean is we should keep working on the issue of campaign finance and other issues that we think may be significant. And let's work to try to find a solution that is workable. And as you, Senator Parrish, quite rightly said, that will serve all of us on whichever side of the House we may be at whatever point in time we may be there. With that, Mr. Speaker, I think it's past some people's lunchtime, and so I shall take my seat. I thank you.
This concludes the debate. It has been moved and seconded that the bill shortly entitled House of Assembly Elections Act 2025 be read a second time. Those in favor? Those against? The ayes have it.
House Assembly Elections Act 2024.
The bill will now stand committed to a committee of the whole House to be considered clause by clause. that the bill shortly entitled House Assembly Election Act 2025 pass the committee stage with minor amendments. The question is that I report to the committee for the adoption of the bill. Those in favor? Those against? The ayes have it. AG. Yeah. Mike? Yeah. Yeah. Good, good.
Mr. Speaker, I move that the bill shortly entitled House of Assembly Elections Act 2025 be read a third time and passed.
Speaker.
It has been moved and seconded that the bill shortly entitled House of Assembly Elections Act 2025 be read a third time and passed. Those in favor? Those against? The ayes have it.
House Assembly Elections Act 2025.
The bill has been read a third time and passed accordingly.
Mr. Speaker, I move the second reading of the bill shortly entitled Electoral Commission Act 2024. Second.
Seconded, Mr. Speaker.
Mr. Speaker, this also this is the third piece of the suite of three pieces of legislation that was spoken of earlier, and concludes this phase of the electoral modernization. The Electoral Commission Bill is a new creature insofar as Dominica's law is concerned. It is something that has come directly from Sir Dennis's report and recommendations, which had with it an appendix which was in the form of the Election Commission Bill 2023. We have never had an Election Commission Bill or Act before. What we have operated under is the constitutional provision for the establishment and functioning of the Electoral Commission. And the intent of this bill is to create greater autonomy for the Electoral Commission, which includes provision of a special fund, and as well as greater autonomy in terms of engaging appropriate staffing and also the broader functioning of the Commission. It also provides for various committees that may be necessary to assist the Commission in its functioning, and allows for the Commission to be able to engage suitable individuals who will not be members of the Commission, but will provide support, maybe, for example, in some type of subcommittee type situation and so forth, on areas that they may need assistance on. The bill quite clearly has the support of the government. There were, not all of the recommendations were adopted. The posture that I have taken and that I propose to continue to take is to deal with what is in the bill presented to the House rather than what is not in the bill, unless I am responding, rebutting, or clarifying something in relation to a point made by some other member of the House. So, Mr. Speaker, what I think I ought to say, though, is in relation to the Electoral Commission, it is actually a creature of Section 56 of the Constitution, which makes clear provision for the membership in the form of stating that the Prime Minister, whoever he or she may be at any given time, if the opportunity or occasion arises for the appointment of a commission, then the Prime Minister will advise the President of two individuals to be appointed, and the Leader of the Opposition similarly has the opportunity to make two recommendations or to advise the appointment of two people. The fifth member of the Commission, who is the chairman, that is the province of the President. And the President, in his or her own deliberate judgment, is free to identify and appoint whoever he or she thinks is appropriate to be the chairperson of the Electoral Commission. That is a factor that I think needs to be at the forefront of everybody's mind, with some of the more creative, some may say fanciful, expressions that I hear about the Commission. I think one of the things that needs to be said, yes, the Commission is expected, and one would hope would have a degree of autonomy and a degree of independence, but it's not absolute. It's quite correct that the Section 56 provides for the Commission to act in its own deliberate judgment, but that obviously has its limitations, and it doesn't take away from the fact that the Constitution provides for clear political appointees. In all likelihood, if a Prime Minister and a Leader of the Opposition are going to advise appointment or recommend appointment of individuals, they are, I would suggest, highly unlikely to appoint individuals who have no political nous, wisdom, experience perhaps even. But that's just, I think, a fact of life as the Constitution stands at the current time. There are not many clauses in this bill. We have the 19 clauses with 3 schedules, and they basically follow the same structure. Part 1, preliminary. Part 2, Electoral Commission, which provides for the objectives of the Commission, staffing, the functions of the Commission, oath of secrecy, and other matters. Part 3, financial provisions, which actually provides for the establishment of the Electoral Commission Fund that I referred to. And Part 4, miscellaneous. And you have a code of conduct, which is at the 3rd schedule, which is in some ways perhaps the most far-reaching element of the Electoral Commission bill. So, Mr. Speaker, I am of the view that the Electoral Commission bill is a bill which is useful as part of the toolkit of modernization. This is the first iteration of it. It may well be that as this unfolds, we will find that we need to make further amendments, adjustments, and I have no doubt that the House will do that at the appropriate time. But at this point in time, Mr. Speaker, I commend the bill to the House.
The bill is before the House for debate.
Mr. Speaker, perhaps what I will add is, Sir Dennis Byron, in his phase 2, or the second phase of his report, June 2023, that is the original source of this. And just for anybody who's listening and wants to follow up, there's nothing more that I think I need to say on the bill, and I should take my seat. Thank you.
This concludes the debate. The bill will now stand committed to the Committee of the Whole House to be considered clause by clause. report that the bill shortly entitled Electoral Commission Act 2025 passed the committee stage with minor amendments. The question is that the report of the committee on the bill be adopted. Those in favor? Those against? The ayes have it. AG.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I move that the bill shortly entitled Electoral Commission Act 2025 be read a third time and passed.
Speaker.
It has been moved and seconded that the bill shortly entitled Electoral Commission Act 2025 be read a third time and passed. Those in favor? Aye. Those against? The ayes have it.
Electoral Commission Act 2025.
The bill has been read a third time and passed accordingly.
Mr. Speaker, I move that the House be adjourned sine die.
It has been moved and seconded that the House be adjourned sine die. Those in favor? Aye. Those against? The ayes have it. House is adjourned sine die.